Welcome to our week on syntax. So now we've talked about phonemes, how phonemes work together in phonology, then how phonemes combine to form words in morphology, and now we're going to start talking about how those words combine to form both phrases and sentences. So that's syntax. So it's the study of the way words combine in a particular language to form phrases and sentences. Our examples are going to focus on English, but each language has its own syntactic properties. So speaking of those properties, there's word order, and then there's co-occurrence relationships we're going to talk about. Then there's syntactic categories, constituency tests, and sentence diagramming. These are our topics. So when a string of words form a sentence, or it's grammatical, when it's ungrammatical, that means it does not form a sentence, so it's marked with an asterisk. So as you go through your text, you'll see things marked with an asterisk. That means it's ungrammatical. So we need to look at word order. So in English, our typical word order is subject, verb, object. In other languages, sorry for that clicking, in other languages, it can follow different patterns. It could be verb, object, subject. It could have multiple objects. It could not require objects. But in English, it's generally subject, verb, object. So then we have parts of our sentences, our syntax, that are co-occurrence relationships. So an argument is an expression required by another expression. So John called his mother yesterday. John and his mother are arguments. You need both of them for the sentence to be grammatical. John's the subject, his mother's the object. You need both of them. An adjunct is an optional expression in the sentence. So John called his mother yesterday. Yesterday is optional. We can just say John called his mother. So if you look at your book on page 213, it details these different co-occurrence relationships. Now, page 227 of your text has examples of different syntactic categories. These are going to be really important when we get into sentence diagramming later in this presentation and also later in your book. You need to have a very strong understanding of what these different categories mean. And so make sure you're reviewing it, and then when you go to start diagramming sentences, you're going back to this list so you know exactly what you're talking about in terms of categorizing them. So when we're looking at phrases or sentences, we need to be able to determine what's a constituent and what isn't. So we have different tests that will allow us to determine which parts are constituents. Our book only discussed the question answer, the clefting, and the coordination test. Coordination isn't that great. Question answer is good. Clefting is good. But there's other constituency tests that you can be used as well. And those are in this presentation and in your PowerPoint. So when you go to do your practice problems this week, you'll have to test for constituencies. So go back to this and use some of the better constituency tests. Some of them are easier to form. Some of them just might connect better with a certain example. So constituents are groups of elements in a sentence that together express a meaning in a coherent way. We do not look at individual words as constituents. It has to be a group of elements. So if we look at the example sentence, Pat and Jamie like to spend money at the mall, you can't just say Pat is a constituent, Ann is a constituent, Jamie is a constituent. We're not looking at that. We're looking at sections together of this that form constituents. Now, not all tests work for all constituents, but you have to have at least 2 tests in order to justify any constituent that you're arguing. So our first is our question answer test. So you try to make a question that includes all the words except what's being tested. So who likes to spend money at the mall? Pat and Jamie. What do Pat and Jamie like? To spend money at the mall. What do Pat and Jamie like to do? Spend money at the mall. What do Pat and Jamie like to spend the mall money at? You can tell that one fails. Money at is not a constituent because it doesn't, you can't take it out of the sentence and make a question. Then we can do clefting. We create a sentence. It was X that Y, with X being what we tested. So it was Pat and Jamie that Y like to spend money at the mall. It was X, the mall, that Y, Pat and Jamie like to spend money at. And here's one that fails. It was Pat that Ann and Jamie like to spend money at the mall. So coordination, we're going to try coordinating it with a second argument, and then we reverse it. So Pat and Jamie like to spend money at the mall and watch movies. Pat and Jamie like to watch movies and spend money at the mall. So we can add a new phrase in and see if we can coordinate it, use it with the and. So Pat and Jamie like to spend money at and watch movies at the mall. Pat and Jamie like to watch movies and money at the mall. Both are ungrammatical, so it fails the coordination test. Our rearrangement test moves the suspected constituent elsewhere to see if we can do it. Money at the mall is what Pat and Jamie like to spend. So money at is what Pat and Jamie like to spend at the mall. That one fails. We've seen through multiple tests now, money at is not a constituent in this sentence, but it's going to keep getting used, for example. Okay, we can also do the omission, where we omit it. Pat and Jamie like to spend money at the mall. Pat and Jamie like to spend the mall. Money at. That one fails again. Proform means we add a pronoun or other substitute for the suspected constituent. They like to spend money at the mall, representing Pat and Jamie. Pat and Jamie like to do that, spend money at the mall. Pat and Jamie like to spend that at the mall. Again, money at fails. So here are some different constituents that we tested for using all of our different tests. Pat and Jamie, to spend money at the mall, spend money at the mall, the mall. Those are all different constituents of that sentence. This ability to break the sentence down in constituents is going to help you when you're diagramming your sentences. So we now know how to look at the different parts. So when we're forming it into a hierarchy, structure for a diagram, we know which sections have to go together, which are important together. So we can now test for constituents, and we want to look at phrase structures and how the language combines constituents of various syntactic categories to form grammatical sentences. So if you look at page 232 in your text, example phrase structure rules for English are there. So a sentence consists in English of a noun phrase and a verb phrase. So if we go back to Pat and Jamie, we know our noun phrase is Pat and Jamie, and like to spend money at the mall is our verb phrase. So we already know how we're going to start that sentence diagram. So our noun phrase is a determiner and a noun. If we look at Pat and Jamie, we don't have any determiners there, so we don't have to have that. A preposition phrase, like at the mall, is our preposition, at, plus a noun phrase. The determiner, the, and the noun, mall. So we can see how this is all breaking down. So let's look at a couple examples. At home, and walked the brown dog quickly. So this is a prepositional phrase here, at home. Our preposition is at, and then our noun phrase drops down to the noun, to home. If there had been a determiner, like at the home, we would add determiner here under noun phrase. But remember, if you're confused, go back to our structure rules. And that'll tell you how the different structures are getting broken down on page 232. So walked the brown dog quickly. The transitive verb here is walked. Our noun phrase goes down to our determiner, and then our noun, brown dog, we have to break down again because we have an adjective and we have a noun. And then we have an adverb and adverb phrase, quickly. So the professor gave the class a quiz. We have our noun phrase, determiner, the professor, or the, and then noun, our professor. And then our verb phrase, ditransitive verbs, means it requires two things. So gave it to whom. So we're answering those with our two noun phrases. So gave the class, that's our whom, it, a quiz, determiner, and our noun. So try these different questions, and then they'll be listed here, the answers, in the PowerPoint. And here's some practice constituency tests to help. I know I said we don't usually do individual ones, but I just tossed one in here so you could see it, because it's generally going to pass. All right, let me know if you have any questions.